we were made for these times, right? It's not accidental that a young, let's say a 30-year-old woman with small children, she has all these challenges because she lives in 2026 and that she might not have had if she lived in 1976. But she was made to live in this time. God planned, God from all eternity knew that she would live in this culture in this time. So she has the capacity to make a good home.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonen, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author, and speaker. I met my guest today, Dia Boyle, at my parish, where she'd been invited last fall to talk about her newest book, The Thoughtful Home. It was a cozy evening and put me in such a great mindset. I loved Dia describing the characteristics of a home, something I'd never quite put to words before. But as a mother who worked from home most often in these last decades, the theme of this work resonated deeply within, and I felt myself wanting to explore the topic further and introduce it more broadly through interviewing Dia. Along with having set roots down in her own homes through the years, Dia Boyle is a lifelong learner and a graduate of Cornell College and the Pontifical Institute of Medieval Studies, where she earned her M.S.L. and met her husband. Now happily at home in a university community in Minnesota, Dia has raised 3 children, made a home for her family, and fostered lasting friendships around her coffee table. Her most recent work, The Thoughtful Home, is a neat little book about what a home is for and what a home is. And there's more to it than you might think. For example, on page 34 of her book, human beings need homes in order to be human. It's time now to let Dia share her story behind the book, her faith, and her affinity for helping others discover what she has learned about the importance of our homes and how we are shaped by them in ways we might never have thought of before now. Let's welcome Dia. Welcome, Dia, to Matters of Soul Importance. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful too. I loved your talk that you gave at St. Joachim, my home parish, back in the fall, I believe it was. It was a really fun, I remember there was like a sofa and some chairs, and it was just a relaxed, nice conversation. And then as I started getting more into your book, even that day I asked, could you be on my podcast? Because it just opened things in my mind and my heart that I wasn't anticipating. So I want to hear a little bit about, before we go into our topic today, which is, can a home have a soul? Which I know is kind of out there, but we will do our best to answer that question. I have some thoughts too that might help. But first, I want to know about you, Dia. Can you share a little bit about yourself, your faith growing up, and then also, like, what kind of home did you live in?
Oh, I'd love to talk about that. So I grew up in a wonderful home. I grew up in central Iowa in the 60s and 70s, university town. My dad was a professor. My mom was at home full time until I was in middle school. I had 3 sisters and no brothers. But I think I would emphasize that it was a very good home, but it was also a very normal home. We weren't different from all of my friends. Their dad, for most of them, actually, their dads worked at the university. Their moms were at home. I wasn't raised a Catholic. I'm a convert. I converted in college, but we were Methodist, and we were a church-going family. We didn't, I would say that our home wasn't really full of faith. That was more practiced at church. But it was certainly, it was part of our life for sure. We were very, we always went to church on Sunday. We went to youth group on Wednesday. So it was a Christian home for sure. Lots of fun. We ate 3 meals together. I mean, if we were home, I was thinking in grade school, we walked home for lunch. So we had 3 meals together every day that we were all in the home, so.
I was just going to mention my maternal grandmother, which is the only grandparent I really knew since age 9, when I had a grandma that died before I was born. Then my 2 grandpas were gone by the time I was 9. So my maternal grandma, who lived to 101, was from Iowa, and she had grown up Methodist too. So I don't know a lot of people from Iowa, but I knew my grandma and some of the stories, and they were very academic, very scholarly minded too. Her dad he was a judge and a lawyer and a judge. So anyway, you're bringing me back to my grandma as you're talking about your childhood. So anyway, carry on. I just had to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking about our house, that house we lived in was not, it was perfectly adequate, but I shared a room with my sister. We all shared a bathroom. We just had one car. So some of the things I talk about in my book about sometimes less being more, that didn't seem unusual at all. Again, like my home, my experience, my house was very typical compared to all my peers. I would say my mother was happy. She was not stressed out at that, when she was at home. So it was a good, I remember thinking maybe in middle school, we were asked to think about our careers for the future. So this would be the early 70s. And we were being encouraged the girls were being encouraged to think about careers. And I remember thinking, I want to be home. I want to be full-time at home, not because I didn't think I could do anything outside the home, but because it seemed like the happiest life. And I think that reflects very well on like my mother and her experience, and at least the impression she gave me. And I know later I did ask her about that, and she said, "Oh, those were the happiest years of my life." So it was very positive.
Is her name Dolores or Maria Dolores? Because I noticed who you dedicated the book to. I was thinking if it was your mom and your grandma.
Actually, close. So my name was Dolores. Yes, she's gone now. And Maria Dolores is actually, I'm a member of Opus Dei. And in Opus Dei, the founder is Saint Jose Maria. His mother's name was Maria Dolores. And she was very instrumental in forming him to form like the approach to the home, which has influenced me. So it was a tribute both to kind of the my grandmother in my vocation in Opus Dei, and then my mother.
Oh, that's so cool. I actually interviewed someone about Jose Maria Escriva a while back, so I'll have to connect to that again. But beautiful. Well, I'm glad I asked. So you've written this neat book about what our homes are and mean to us as humans, which I don't think we think a lot about. I'm going to tell you why I chose the topic, the subject, the question. The same grandmother I'm talking about, she ended up in North Dakota eventually and married her husband, my grandpa. They ended up living in their parents, my grandpa's parents' home, which was a historic home that was built in Bismarck by a famous architect that came to Bismarck and said, I will stay here and build like 3 or 4 homes. And it was in the prairie home style. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually on the historic register. I have so many great memories of this home. We lived in a really, really modest home. My parents were teachers on the Fort Peck Reservation. And so very tight quarters. And then we would go to my grandparents, and it was just this lovely home that I feel like it had a soul, because so much of that home has stayed with me. Now, that wasn't my primary home, but it was a home that has such rich memories. And even though it was only until I was 9 when my grandpa died and my grandma sold that house, it kind of haunts me in a good way. The attic that I used to sneak up to have some quiet time. I didn't know at the time I was an introvert. The laundry chutes on different floors that my sister and I would throw things down to each other and hear about the cousin or uncle who got stuck on a nail one time going down one of those things. And that's where Christmas was, and that's where Easter was. We had our holidays there. And so anyway, this home has so much life and character that I at some point felt like there's a soul there. Now I know it's not a human soul, but I asked the question, and as we're going along, maybe that will just be inherent in how you answer. But really, it goes back to the basics of how you laid this book out, which is just really to start from the beginning. Like, what is a home? So maybe we can start there. And also, I'm curious too. At the same time, what drove you to write this book?
Well, I'll start with that. What drove me to write this book? I'm often asked that question. It was an interesting experience. I mean, it took a while. It took a long time. Not so much the writing, but the whole process that led me there. My husband is a professor, like I said, and teaches mostly undergraduates, and we always try to have those students in our home as often as we can. Like a few times a semester, if possible. And that's the way I grew up. My parents, my dad being a professor, they had students over. And when I was in college, I went over to professors' houses. It's much rarer now to do that, but that's the way we've lived our lives. And then we are also fortunate enough that every few years we get to go, my husband and I get to go to Rome, and where this is University of St. Thomas. They have a campus in Rome. And so we spend a semester living with the students on the campus. It's like a villa. And so we live in very close to, 25 to 30 students. So we get to know them very well. We feel like family. We call them, the name of the villa is Bernardi. And so we call them our Bernardi children, and we're their Bernardi parents. And it is a very real relationship. So I get close to these students, especially the young women. And this is a Catholic program. They are, for the most part, really, they want to get married. They want to have a Catholic marriage. They want to have a Catholic family. They want to have children. They want to have a home. All the things that I wanted when I was their age, but they seemed to me very uncertain about all the kind of practical decisions that I took for granted, what they were going to do for a career, whether they were going to be home with their children or find outside care for their children, what kind, just decisions about where to live, how to, just all those decisions, like division of labor with husband and wife. They just didn't seem to have. They were uncertain and they were confused in a way that I didn't remember. And so I started to realize that was in part because their background, they didn't necessarily grow up in a home that was, well, let me say, as I said about my own home, it was typical. It was what all my friends had, the same kind of home and setup and parents. And these students don't. Some of them, their moms were home. Some of them, they come from broken families. Some of them, their moms worked full time. Some of them, never eat the family meal. Others do eat the family meal. It's an interesting thing to ask them about their, do they grow up with the family meal? And almost all of them will say yes. But if you push further, a lot of times what they mean is we had dinner together on Thanksgiving. We had dinner together maybe on Sunday morning or brunch on Sunday morning, but they didn't have it as a regular everyday practice. So that makes a big difference when they're thinking about their own homes. Anyway, I came to see that this uncertainty just came because they didn't, there wasn't just they couldn't be on autopilot, I guess. I could sort of be on autopilot when I started making a home. And so I thought, well, I'm going to get my thoughts together about what a home is and what a home is for. I'm a pretty philosophically minded person. So that then they can so they have the information to make decisions. I didn't want to tell them, I didn't feel like I should tell them whether they should be at home full time, whether they should, split the chores down the middle with their husband or be kind of the primary homemaker. I didn't want to make those decisions because I think everyone, has different circumstances. But I thought they do need to know what they're trying to do, what their project is in making a home. So I started to teach a little class. They loved it. People started to ask me to speak to groups about this. And when I would do that, I would often get the request to, you should write a book. You should write this down. And so eventually I did. I've been a writer, kind of on the side for a long, long time. And so I decided to give it a try. And that's how it came about.
I love that. I have a couple thoughts I want to throw in here. So I went to Moorhead State University, which is Minnesota State University, Moorhead, near where we are now. And I was far from home in Northeast Montana. So when I would go home, most of the time it was just going to my grandma's house in Bismarck, which wasn't the big house anymore. But that was kind of my home. But I didn't have that home to settle into. There was one time a professor invited a group. We were I think student advisors, and we went over to his house, and there was a dog, and there was, I did not realize how much I missed being in a house because I was a vagabond, because I was from a different place. Even in the summers, I would go from apartment to apartment to apartment. Some of my friends would go back to their Minnesota homes or whatever, and I would be there in the summer. And, I just remember there's just this feeling of warmth and belonging, and I didn't even know I was missing it. So it kind of hit me just huge. And so that's one thought. So I'm relating to what you say about having students over, and I just know how much that must mean to them. The other thing is, I feel like towards the end of college, my husband and I were kind of we met in college, and we were engaged and getting ready to get married right after college. He wasn't really thinking about this, but I was suddenly plagued with, I think I want to, have a family. And now what's that going to mean for me with this broadcast journalism career? Yeah. And I was really kind of put into a deep place of thinking about, where am I going? And why I say that is, why did it happen so late? I feel like the university system, even though you're very tied to it, has, and maybe it's different now, maybe it's different at where your husband is, but I think it's failed us. I know I felt failed. I felt like I had everything I needed for a career. I had nothing that I needed for a vocation. And it put us in such a quandary. Which took years to work out. In fact, I wish I had this book a long time ago. I was like, oh, my younger self would have loved this. Yeah. So can you speak a little bit to that missing piece? And maybe that's changing. But as you were talking, my thought was fractured. Our society is so fractured now. And we need to come back home. We need to come home. So
I think that's a great insight. And I don't actually think, I don't think it's getting better. I think maybe we're becoming more aware of this problem, that young women go to college, which is fantastic, and young women prepare for a career, which is fantastic. But I think they don't think, and the men too. Let me be clear. My husband and I have a very traditional marriage, but traditional in the sense of he's the primary breadwinner. I'm at home. That's the way we always wanted it to be. But I've seen many, many successful families and homes where both of them work, even some where the husband stays home. Women work from home. There's just a lot of options now. So I want to be really clear about that. But we don't, it's like a blind spot that we prepare. I'm just going to talk about women. We prepare for a career, and we want to have a family. I think most young women do want to have a family, but they really don't think. They just figure it will work out. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say that they seemed anxious and confused. It wasn't, they didn't really know why they were anxious and confused. And I think it's because they just thought it's all going to work out, but they didn't know how, because they hadn't seen it done. So I did write the book. When I taught that class, I told you that was kind of the beginning of the book. That class I offered it to girls who were, I think it was seniors in college, and they could, or out of college, but not yet married. So they could be engaged, but they couldn't be married. And part of my point for that, and partly it was just to limit the numbers, but part of my point was, you want to be thinking about this before you actually make before you choose a husband or commit to a husband, because if you think, I want to be at home full time, for example, you need the right kind of husband for that. And if you think I want to work outside the home and have the support to do that, you need the right kind of husband for that. You need to think about these things ahead of time. And you're not led to that in academia, for sure, at the university. You might, by like almost accidentally, because some professor reaches out to you, or because, you have a mentor that's a few years older that helps you out, but it's not built into the university system. I'm not even sure how well it could be built into the university system. That might be a lack of imagination on my part, but that's why I think it is so. I've always felt like my husband's career is partly my career, because I'm the reason that he can bring students home, have them over, let them see a home, let them see how I do it, so they have something in their imagination. And then they kind of naturally do come to me and ask me questions and, just like pour out their hearts sometimes. And so I feel like it's a really important role that I play in the university setting, but of course it's not official in any way.
Right. Well, I just have to say, I not only think it is possible, but I think it's necessary. And I think you could be the teacher of that class in one college, and then we need other people in other places, because what is a university? It is to educate us to go out into the world and be adults and have careers. And as you said in your book, which I wished I would have read, like I said earlier, we need to think about our role as homemakers even. And this was towards the end of your book, after you discussed all the things about a home, where the word homemaker came in, and you really defined that. And I think that's a word that we've kind of shunned and pushed out.
Yes.
It was almost like we have to pick, you're either going to be valued in this way or that way. And you had so many beautiful things to say about the dignity of a homemaker, which I think we have completely lost. So I think if college is to prepare us for the world, then that should be a part of it. It doesn't have to be academic over here, and then you just have to go out and wing it later.
Well, how about this, Roxanne? How about if we just put my book on everybody's syllabus?
There we go. There we go. Yes. Yeah.
I do think like that, I heard a rumor that at your parish, they're using the book in the pre-Cana formation. I don't know if that's true or not. I would love to hear that.
I hope so. Yeah.
But I think it's a great like engagement gift, or a gift for a young woman.
Yes.
I'm not just trying to sell books. It's a way to help them to think through these questions. And you're picking or pointing out the word homemaker. That homemaker, I would say, when you said, can a home have a soul? I think the homemaker, for that, if we think of that as an analogy, the soul is the form of the body, right? This is Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. The soul is what holds the body together, gives it form. When we die, our soul leaves, and our body is no longer a body, it's a corpse, and it deteriorates, right? It falls apart because the soul's no longer there. I think that if we wanted to think about the home, but we're not a soul or a body. We are a body and soul. We are a human person, united, the body and soul united. And so if we were applying that to the home, I think I would say the home is like the human person. The homemaker is the soul, and the house, and all the material stuff is the body. And the house without a homemaker is just a house, right? It's something, it's real estate. But the homemaker, again, doesn't need to be a stay-at-home mom. I love the possible. I think it's such a wonderful life to live, of being at home full time. But you're making a home, whether you work in a big career outside the home, or whether you're home full time, or whether you live in honestly, if you live in a little apartment by yourself as a college student or as a grad student, you still need to make a home. It's not good for you to live just in a room that's, it's just way station, like a hotel or a motel.
And another thing about the soul, if I understand, I'm not a philosopher like you are, but it's an animating principle, right? It is something that animates. And so in that way, I could see also that it's definitely tied to the human, right? It's not like on its own, it's going to have this animating function, but the people in it and the memories, that's what I'm talking about. When I say it has a soul,
yes.
It's the relationships that came together and mingled and had dinner together and all those things. My grandpa in the kitchen, he was a wonderful chef with his apron on, and then we would go into the screened in porch, cool little eating nook. And then sometimes we'd go into the formal dining room where there was a swinging door, and we would pretend that we were waitresses, and taking people's orders like for elephant ears and just so many, all those things. Like that's what brought it alive. And that's why I feel like it has a soul, because it hasn't left me. It is a part of me. And our homes are. Yeah.
I think that what we receive from our homes stays with us. It forms us into who we are. That's why it's so important, that the home, and it gives us like, even if you can think of it as memories, but you can also think of it as the home that I live in now. And then I leave my home to go out into the world, to work to go to school or to work in my office or whatever I'm doing. And I'm talking also about my husband, my children. They live in the home, and then they go out into the world, and the life of the home, the formation and the care and the attention and the experience they receive in the home, they take that with them into the world. And so that they're different people in the world. And I mean, I would say if they come from a good home, they're much better people in the world than they would be if they were just living in, an impersonal hotel. Let's put it that way, where no one is paying attention to them. They kind of have the bare minimum, or even maybe more than the bare minimum, but no one is there. There's no life in that home.
Yeah.
And so I think the home impacts the world so strongly, because of the people, the type of people, the experience of the people, and the capacity of the people out in the world to take care of other people, right? And I always think I want my children's teachers to to go home at night to a good home, and then come back into the classroom the next day from a good home, cared for, having slept well, having had a good meal, having been, paid attention to, listened to, sympathized with, maybe even sometimes challenged or corrected by what they hear in the home, and not just my children's teachers, but the cashier at the store, and my Uber driver, and the policeman that is going to pull me over. I want them all, like I would. I'm going to be much more trusting that I'm going to have a good experience with them if they come from a home where they are well taken care of.
Oh, see, it's so deep. It's so deep. Page 43, you say, and it relates to something you just said a little bit ago. It was about our children, which is important to me. I'm a new empty nester, very new.
Oh,
I mean, we have 5 kids, and our last one is just starting to launch. And it's like, oh my gosh, like we got this house. We kept having to move to a little bit bigger house because we were so squished. This was the house this was the one. We have 5 kids. We've got to figure this out. And now it's so quiet. And but anyway, what you said, and you were talking about children, but you said the homes, I change it. The homes we leave never cease to be our homes. You were talking about the homes our children leave never cease to be their homes. Yeah. And that did good to my heart because, and another thing too, I've, with a good walking friend, I've lamented a little bit. I always said I didn't want to be sad about the empty nest thing, but there's, a few little grieving moments and things like that. And she said, but Roxanne, your kids always come home, because 4 of the 5 are in the area. And so whenever we have birthdays or celebrations, the home comes to life again. And I know what I'm talking about, but I have quietly recorded a little bit of the chatter while I'm in the kitchen and no one can see me, because that life came back
Yeah.
And it's like you're thirsting for that. Like it's just, so anyway, but all that is about the home and what happens in the home. And of course, I want you to comment on that, but we're going to go into also that not everyone has that, which when we have had that, and my growing up home had some sadness in it. So that's the other part, right? And we want to address that part too, because a home can be sad, and it can be have some hard memories.
Yeah.
So wherever you want to start, I know I threw a lot at you. I do that, but whatever you want to comment on that, either like empty nest or the sadness of
well, actually,
home
I think
experience.
there's a little bit of a connection there. So I think that the empty nest. I'm an empty nester, and it's been a few years now. It's been maybe 4 or 5 years that I've been an empty nester. I've got one child who's not a child at all, but is going to spend the summer with us for various reasons. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. But I'm also thinking like, oh, that's going to be, I'm going to have to put more effort into my dinners now, you know? But, my husband and I are very, I don't know, like we never feel like we can get enough time together. So for us, it's kind of nice. We are enjoying the empty nest. But I think that the empty nest it's an opportunity and maybe in a sense a responsibility to offer that home because we can be more available. Our dinner table is emptier, you know, but we have all this these skills and this muscle memory that we gained over, you know, for you feeding 5 kids every day, you know how to serve a family meal. We have a responsibility to reach out to other people in hospitality, and that could be. I mean, a lot of times that is our extended family. You know, our children come back home, right? And if you have them living near you, you probably could have that a lot, you know, and we can support our adult children in that way, whether we're, you know, sort of babysitting, having the grandchildren over, or just giving them a break from cooking so that we, you know, and also just the experience of being together. But also to those people out there that maybe don't have a good home, don't have they have a home where there is sadness. I think that's a good way to put it, as opposed to a bad home. There are homes that have a lot of stress in them. There's homes that are very lonely. And we need to be attentive to that and include those people in our homes. Whether it's, I mean, for us in years past, and we still we live it this way, is to have students over because they may have wonderful homes, but they're separated from their homes for now because of college. But as we get older, I realize we're going to have a lot of friends who are widows or widowers. We're going to have friends that are, you know, like they just can't get out as much. We're not quite to that point yet, but our friends are retiring now. So, you know, it's coming closer and closer. And I think it's like, that is my responsibility to be on the lookout for those people and include them in the life of our home. You know, and so I think that the home that is difficult as a, you know, for children in a home that, you know, whether it's a broken home or just a home where there's a lot of suffering for one reason or another, we can find, those children, it's good for them to see a home, to see other homes where things aren't stressful or where things aren't, where there, you know, I'm dancing around this a little bit because I don't know what made your home sad, but if we're blessed with a happy, intact, solid, functioning home, that's something we can share and with those who don't have that. And that might be just having our children's friends over, you know, for dinner, so that they see what a family meal is without everyone on their phones, for example. There are children. I hear experiences. People say, "Well, I thought we had the family meal, every night because we all eat at the same time, but we're all eating in front of the I mean, not even in front of the television, in front of different programs, like in front of a laptop watching or a phone watching some program. And they didn't even think of that as, the point of the family meal in a very large part is that we are gathered together and that we're in contact and we're talking to each other and we're taking care of each other and paying attention to each other. So those are things that we can share with others who don't have that experience. And so when they go to make their own homes, they have at least a sense of there's something more than what I grew up with. There's something better than what I grew up with. And I want to, little by little, try to live that. We're not going to change. If we grew up with without much of an experience of a good, solid home, it's not going to be easy to make a good, solid home, but it's certainly possible. And it's going to be like step by step. Maybe it's not going to be an overnight turnaround. This is why I really want people to read the book when they're young, so that they don't have to, suddenly wake up at 50 years of age and say, I'm doing everything wrong. I mean, the book won't tell them that, I don't think, but because it's so much harder to change, to tell a bunch of teenage kids, I expect you home for dinner every night now, when that's not the way they grew up. But if you tell a 2-year-old that, the 2-year-old doesn't know anything different,
Right. Yeah, you can. I love that hopeful part of your book about that you can start over, you can create new memories. I do want to go back and explain. So I have spoken before. My dad was a teacher as well. He was going to be a priest at one point, married my mom, had 2 kids, and fell into addiction, alcohol. And so he actually was recovered later. And so that was beautiful. And some of that lost fatherhood, I would say, came back. And he was a good dad in the way that we knew we were loved. But there was that brokenness. His mom had died when he was only 19. They were very close. Like there was brokenness there. And so that's what it was. My mom was ever loving, a teacher providing for us really when my dad couldn't. So there was love there too. But it was a home that it was small and we couldn't really have people over because it was just kind of one of those things, Yeah. But on some occasions we did. My mom had this tradition of having her class, and she would take them in sections, like 6 at a time or whatever, over for dinner. And that, I absolutely loved it because we didn't sit down. My mom would make dinner, but my dad would go to the bar around the time supper was. Yeah. So anytime I did have like a traditional kind of setting where we sat down together, which we did at my grandma's. And so that was just such a lovely thing. Okay, that's that. Another thing I wanted to mention is something I want to tell this story because it relates to today, and also another thing that you said. My husband and I, a couple years ago, joined a marriage group called Teams of Our Lady, and it's a really beautiful experience. And you meet at each other's homes once a month. And you have a meal together. That's how it starts. And you pray together. And then later you go into the living room and scripture, and just, it's beautiful. But I have just so much loved, more than I realized, not only contributing to those meals at other people's houses, but having people over at ours. And I think I'm understanding now what you're saying about, I had cooked a lot of meals all those years, and it did sometimes feel a little bit like drudgery. You mentioned the word in your book. But now I have those skills, and I always did kind of like cooking. I was always messing around in the kitchen. So anyway, when it's our turn, it's a lot of work, but I absolutely love having people in our house again and sharing a meal and sharing prayer. And but the last time we hosted, my husband said, I just feel like our house, I don't know, he felt like it was too small, or, we kind of had to figure out a way to get 13 people into our small little dining room, which we had to get an extra table and kind of put it, like it was complicated. We don't have a huge big imagine. Yeah, it's a bi-level. We so we could fit everyone in, but now it doesn't work. And so he was kind of feeling badly that it wasn't more accommodating. And I just quickly spat something out that has been resonating with me. I said, but we didn't buy this house to entertain. We bought this house to raise our family. And I wrote a little blog post about it, and it got quite a few looks, reads. And I think I hit on something without really realizing it, but it felt so right in the moment. And my husband was like, "Yeah, you're right." We didn't. So you talk about that in the book too, about how our homes they can have different functions. They can be for entertainment,
of course,
but primarily when we're raising our kids, that's the focus, is raising the kids, right?
I think that's the first priority. The first priority is the family that lives there. So, I mean, even if you're talking about just like an empty nest, the first priority is the marriage. That's, still those two people that are still living there. But for sure, as you think about your family growing, or, the stage that your children are at, if you've got a lot of little toddlers, or if you've got teenagers, or, the ones that are coming in and out as young adults, we have to think about the home is for them, and including yourself. I mean, it's the whole family, right? So I never want to make it sound like the home is something we do for other people. The home is something that we do for ourselves and those we love, those who God has put at our side, in our family. And I think that word you used, entertain, is really interesting because, when we can have people over to entertain them, or we can have people over to, include them in our family. And I mean, obviously they're not members of our family, but I think that's a very important distinction. I mean, it's not like those are two completely different things, but we're not having them over to entertain them, right? We're having them over to converse with them, to share something with them, to be together with them. When you think about entertainment, the sense of like being up on a stage and we're putting on a show for them, right? That's if you think that way, and I think a lot of people do. That's why they don't entertain. That's why they don't have people over, is because they think, I don't have the skills to do this. I don't have my home is not pretty enough, or my food isn't good enough, or whatever. But if you just think of it as bring them into your family life, bring them into the life of your home, that's beautiful. And you know how we say, it's, like a family meal is so much less stressful, at least for me, because, if I forget something, I can just run into the kitchen and get it and nobody cares. Or I can just say, well, we're not going to have that. And I don't feel any pressure because it's my family. And when it's guests, you want everything to be kind of perfect. And that we should never let, one of my favorite expressions is perfection is the enemy of the good. We should never let perfection, our desire for perfection, be the enemy of good hospitality. We can just have people over, and not for dinner, just for drinks. And drinks can be, coffee, or a glass of water, a cup of tea. And our house doesn't have to be gorgeous. It doesn't have to be immaculate. Just, if there's room for them to sit down, there's a clear space for them to put down their glass of water, that's adequate. Because you're not having them over just to give them water, right? You're having them over to be with you, and for you to be with them, for you to listen to them, pay attention to them, learn from them. So I think I got off the topic there.
Oh, no. It just reminded me, we could go into these tangents. I mean, there's so much here, and we have disregarded the home kind of as sort of a secondary thing, just a place to come to rest and then go out to the real world, right?
Yes,
but the real world starts here. I want to take a little break, Dia, because we like to do that in the midst of our conversations, but we will be back and we're going to go into more tangents. It's fascinating. I am so excited to keep going, Dia. So we'll be back with more Matters of Soul Importance and asking the question, can a home have a soul? We'll be back.
Local news affects your life. It gives you the confidence and clarity to make better decisions every day. You can support that with a digital subscription. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to take advantage of our introductory offer, just $6 for 6 months.
Welcome back to Matters of Soul Importance. We've got Dia Boyle on the line. We are having a great conversation about the home. So Dia, what else do we need to know here about the home? What is a home? Let's start there.
That's wonderful, because a great question, because that is, I think, the core of the book is what is a home and what is it for? Those things, those questions go together, because when we try to figure out what something is, we want to know what it's for. What do you use it for? And I say that a home, my definition is that a home is a material structure that's organized to meet the needs of those who live within it, meet the comprehensive needs. So the material needs of those who live within it, but also the emotional and spiritual and intellectual needs of those who live within it. So the home is an instrument. It's something that's made and used to care for those that live within it. And it's material. That's very important. Like a home, there are bricks and mortar. We need a roof over our head. We need a laundry. We need a refrigerator and a stove. But we also, it's not just that. It's not just the material structure. It's also the life that goes on within it. So it's the routines of the home, the practices of the home. They're part of that instrument of care. And we all need to be cared for. And the home is such an effective instrument of care because we live in it. So we are immersed in it all the time. Not all the time, but we're immersed in it for many hours of our days. Mm-hmm. And so we can be cared for in that way. And we can care for those who live within our homes. If let's say if I'm the homemaker and I make a home and no one is ever in my home, they never come home, it's not going to do me any good. It's not going to do them any good. But for most of us, we do come home and we do spend a lot of time in our homes, and we spend time in our homes together. And so it's not just that we care for the others, but we can pay attention to the others and figure out, what do they need? What is, we can sort of say, of course, people need to eat, but do they need to be listened to more? Do they need to be corrected? Do they need to be encouraged? Do they need to be challenged? All those things, we only know that because we're with them. We're paying attention to them. We're used to them.
Yeah, there was a quote that I pulled out here from page 44. A home is where one is paid attention to. Mm-hmm. Wow. Like, do we think about those things? Some of it is second nature, but it's good. Your book is a thoughtful home, the thoughtful home. And so it's good to think about things and the purpose and what is done there. So what more can you say about the home where one is paid attention to? And not only that, Dia, but in an increasingly isolative age where one is not paid attention to, and what the detrimental effects of not having that home where one can be oneself and let down one's guard and know that one is loved.
Yeah.
So important.
I often say that the home I grew up in was not a thoughtful home. And I don't mean that negatively at all. What I mean is my mother didn't think about, now I could be wrong. My sisters we disagree about this. But I don't think my mother was deliberately making a home in a certain way to care for us. I think she was just doing what she was replicating what she had grown up with, changed a little because she grew up in the 30s and 40s and I grew up in the 60s and 70s, right? Things change, but she was pretty much doing what her mother had done and what, generations and generations and generations had done before that. And it served well. Like, if she followed the format, the template of her mother, for us, it was a home that took care of our needs. It was a home where we were together enough that she could see our needs and then care for our needs, and we could see other people, our siblings' needs or her needs, and care for those needs. what I think happened is things changed so much in like maybe the last 50 years that we can't just do what our mothers did and end up with a good home, either because what our mothers did is unrealistic today in our circumstances. Maybe our mother was home full time and we work full time outside the home, or maybe because our mother didn't think about, nowadays, there's several generations between me and the ones starting their homes now. So, so what I'm saying is now we have to think about it. Now we have to be thoughtful because there isn't a template that we can just follow. When I was young, we had something called the dinner hour. And during the dinner hour, you wouldn't call people. Things weren't scheduled during the dinner hour. There weren't sports practices scheduled during the dinner hour. All the activities were over at 5:00 because of course they were over because it was the dinner hour, but that's not true anymore. So we can't just go with the culture and end up with a home that meets the needs of those who live within it. We have to think about it. And we're built to think about things. So that's not a terrible thing. But if we just kind of assume if we don't ever think about it, we're not going to end up with a very effective home unless we're really lucky, I think.
Yeah. And I do like, again, how hopeful your book is, because we can take what you just said and go, well, we're really in a mess and we are not having that anymore. And we could despair. We could just say, this isn't happening. It's not set up that way anymore. Woe is us, and we're going to fall off the face of the earth because we can't do what makes things work anymore. And what you do in your book is you propose that, no, there are solutions here. We don't have to despair. We can make decisions. Like you said, maybe we do have to make some different decisions as a family. I know we had to with 5 kids. Like, we just couldn't be in everything. So it was kind of like, okay, everyone pick something, or we might have to pick it for you. For example, all of our kids were in soccer, and that was kind of it, because it's like that makes it easy for us to get, we still didn't have enough hands at some point. We had to ask other people to help, but that's okay. That's okay. But, we have to adjust. And I guess, to be honest, even there, I felt a little despairing thinking about what used to be. But that doesn't mean that God has abandoned, we can make this work. We can make it work. So that your book is very hopeful.
And actually, Roxanne, I want to say that something to that. We were made for these times, right? It's not accidental that let's say a 30-year-old woman with small children, she has all these challenges because she lives in 2026, and that she might not have had if she lived in 1976. But she was made to live in this time. God planned, God from all eternity knew that she would live in this culture in this time. So she has the capacity to make a good home in this time. She's not built for 1976. She's built for 2026. And that's important to remember that. And it's so important for me to remember as someone who I was a teenager in 1976. I can't be attached to that world that, everyone else has to experience what I experienced. Those were the Carter years. That was dreadful.
Yeah, we got to look at the whole picture, not just go back and dream about what was good.
So one of the things I say in the book is I have a whole big chapter on the family meal, and I call it the queen of the methods. I think not methods, but it's such an important means of caring for those in the home. But what I also say is, and I talk a lot about it, but what I also say is if the family meal, if like having dinner together 4, 5, 6 times a week as a whole family is not possible, then you have to think, okay, well, how am I going to spend enough time with my children, with my husband? What other things can we do to make, because the point's not that we're bad if we don't eat dinner together. The point is the dinner table makes it possible for us to spend half an hour together every day in a relaxed, natural setting with nothing to do but, enjoy our, the pleasure of eating and talking to each other. So if we can't have that family meal, we just think it's not possible because of sports or because of my husband's job or my job or whatever, then we can say, well, maybe it's to have a relaxed dessert time every evening, or maybe it's to have a breakfast in the morning, or maybe it's, maybe it's that we have we just have 20 minutes together that we all sit in the living room and talk to each other about our days. It's going to look, there's a reason that the family meal is so kind of natural for this, but it's not the only way. But we have to think about, okay, if we can't live this, how are we going to live in order for the benefits to occur for my family?
Absolutely. Yes. Another thought I had just quickly, I used to be when my kids were little, I was in a faith sharing group with other mothers and we discussed things. And I remember one of the things was how much kind of emphasis we were putting into our homes. And I remember one of my friends said, well, we spend so much time here, especially in this part of the country. We're like inside in the winter time. We have to bring beauty in it somehow,
yes.
To survive. Yes. When we were repainting our white walled house inside some years back, I insisted on a yellow dining room, and my husband thought I was crazy, but I'm like, no, I want sunshine all year long. And he ended up really loving it. And it's still yellow. It's a nice, very nice yellow. And so but that lifts your spirits. And so there's different ways we can arrange things. One of the things you've talked about is the home being a uniquely human endeavor. So do you want to talk about that?
I'd love to. So really, only human beings need homes. Only human beings make homes. We think about animals having homes, like they live in a den or they live in a nest or they live in a, whatever. But they really don't. They really don't live in those homes in the way that we live in our homes. Those little structures, the den or the nest or whatever, they serve a purpose, a limited purpose in the life of in the life cycle of the animal. But the animals live in habitats, and that's what they need. If their habitats are destroyed, then they don't thrive. But actually, human beings can live in any habitat, almost any habitat, because we have homes. And on the other side of things, angels don't need homes, right? Because angels don't have bodies. Angels don't have needs in that sense that we have needs. So just to think about animals versus human beings, why? Why do human beings need homes and why do animals not need homes? And my answer is that human beings are free. So animals aren't free. Animals live by their instincts, and they look like they're free sometimes. You watch a squirrel outside and it looks like it's just doing whatever it wants to do, but actually it's doing whatever its instinct tells it to do. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't, there's no such thing as an evil squirrel or a holy squirrel, right? It's just a good squirrel. It's just a squirrel doing what a squirrel does. And it doesn't need formation. It might need some protection when it's very tiny. So it needs a little nest for a little while. But, animals grow so fast too. Mm-hmm. But human beings, we don't just need protection. We need formation because we're free. So we can decide to be evil. We can make evil decisions, and we can decide to be good and choose good. And that takes, formation, spiritual formation, human formation, intellectual formation, so that we will act out of our freedom, we will do the good. That's why we need that. And we need that formation, not just as children. It's true that, human beings, my son's a biologist and he says human babies are born 9 months too early, like literally compared to other primates. We are in the womb only half the time that the other, the monkeys are in the womb, given our size and everything. And it's because of the size of our heads, because we have big brains. So we wouldn't be able to be born if our heads were as big as they need to be if we were, 18 months when we were born. But it also means that we need much more care. But we need care as I'm a 66-year-old woman. I still need care. I still need someone to say, oh, what did you do today? I need accountability. I need someone to say, is something going on? Is something wrong? Right? I need that even at my age. That never stops. So we need to be cared for in every stage, at every age, by other human beings. And sometimes it's dependent care, and sometimes it's independent. But we need that care because we're free, and that's a beautiful thing, right? It's beautiful to be free, but we don't just live by instinct.
I was thinking about the saying "free as a bird," and it's like not really. Like
not really.
They're bound. They're bound more than we are. You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So interesting. Well, this seems like a natural segue into like kind of where I wanted to end up here, because this is a topic of earthly and heavenly consequences.
Absolutely.
So earthly and eternal consequences. And I want to talk about God and how he sees the home. I just looked up this verse in Luke 9:58, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, which is an achingly sad statement, and that could be a whole other podcast, but we need a place to lay our heads, and God wants that for us. What are some of the spiritual aspects of your book? And a lot of it is written like more from a philosophical, thoughtful perspective, but you do at the end tie it into like the domestic home, we could say.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I have a chapter in the book called "Where is God in the Home?" And I love the fact that the first Christian worship was in homes. If you go to Rome, and it's not just in Rome, but if you go to Rome, these beautiful basilicas and ancient churches are often built on top of the ruins of a Roman villa that where the worship first started. Some Christian opened his home so that the Christian church, the early Christian church could worship there. The religion was illegal, so it wasn't. They couldn't build churches, and it was only a few centuries later that churches began to be built. So God was literally in those homes, right? I mean, the worship of God, the Holy Mass was celebrated in those homes. But I think that the home now it's so important for our faith. We do, of course, kind of externally, and I don't mean that to minimize it, but we teach our children their first prayers, usually in the home before they're ever in school or learning things, CCD or whatever. We teach them, they see us pray. They learn to pray when we say grace before meals or when we say bedtime prayers. They see, and this is not just our children, but those who come into our homes in hospitality. They see that we have a crucifix on the wall, or they see that we have religious art, that we express our faith there. But I think that's important, very important, because if a child, grows up in a home and is surrounded by all the good things, but not by God, that there's a lesson right there. We want to have God in our homes and the practice of our faith in our homes. But even more deeply, if our Lord in the Gospels, he uses so many images. He uses the image of making bread, of yeast in bread, or of patching cloth, or of whitewashing walls, which, maybe it's like painting walls in our time. Your yellow
dining room. Yes.
All of those images, those parables that or analogies that he offers us, we understand them because of our experience in the home. And even just like God is our Father, we know what a father is like because of what we experience in our home. And people who grow up without a father in the home struggle more with the idea of God as Father. When we talk about brotherhood, what like we are brothers, sisters and brothers in Christ, sisters and brothers in the faith. And we understand what sisters and brothers are because of our homes, because of the people that we live with in our homes growing up and even now. We also, there's a quotation that I use. Sometimes I talk about beauty in the home and well, actually, I won't go into that right now, but God is being, right? When he's asked his name in the Old Testament, when Moses asks his name, he says, I am who am. That's how he names himself, is I'm being itself, I'm existence itself, I'm reality itself. And in our homes, we are really, we can be in contact with reality so much more deeply. We live in a world that's very virtual now. There's screens everywhere. We probably work on screens at work. Our children learn on screens. They have laptops or they have, whatever kind of devices that they learn on. In our homes, if we actually have the power to control the virtual. We can have reality be the foremost thing that we are in. We're together, side by side in the flesh with other human beings, and we're eating real food, and we're talking. We have real art on the walls instead of just something we see on a screen, and that prepares us or forms us so that we can that we want to be in contact with God, who is being itself. And if God is being itself, and we're always in the virtual world, we aren't going to be comfortable with God. We aren't going to be attentive to God. We're not going to be we're going to have a taste for God because he's reality.
Yeah.
And so I think we have the power in our homes to make them places of contact with reality and contact with human beings. I think that's so important for thinking about our brothers and sisters in the faith. We learn what it is to live with people that aren't perfect, to live with people that don't see things the way we see things, to live with people that we have to compromise with because, we share a bathroom, right? So we can't we have to, at some point, someone's going to knock on the door and say, I need to get in there, and the home makes it possible for us. I mean, it makes it, not possible. It makes it customary.
Yeah. For
us to think of other people. And it's not a huge, it's not a strange experience to say, oh yeah, that's the way, she looks at, she's messy and I'm neat and we share a room and we work it out. And maybe we fight about it, but it's not shocking that someone's messy and we're neat,
those are the things that teach us and prepare us to be in the world. And I feel like, as you're describing this, it's like, oh man, this time of all times, we need that reality check. We need that. It's I was just came across a video recently and it was a priest, but something off about it. And I realized it was an AI priest and everything he said was true, but I just was something was missing. And I think the more we're immersed in reality, the more we're going to recognize when something isn't real, it's fake.
Roxanne, I'm sorry. The AI is very interesting because I have received, because I'm an author, I've received some offers or some. I've received emails.
I have too. Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's pure AI or whether it's someone using AI, who's using AI to write this letter, but it's a real person behind it. Or I'm pretty sure it's not just a person writing in her own voice because it sounds so much like AI. But I realized if that's I'm as old as I am. AI is very new to me. So I recognize that, I know what real people sound like, but if you don't have that experience, then you don't know. You don't even, and it's very disconcerting. I find it very disconcerting. I don't know what your experience is, but it's like, I feel like I want this to be real, but I can tell it's not,
That happened to me this summer, and my son, who's a computer science graduate, was living with us for this summer, and I went to him immediately, and we kind of went back and forth, and I kind of had a conversation with the email, whatever. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was AI, but it's very disconcerting, and it makes you question reality. And anyway, I know that's a good topic. We need to cover that topic too. But one of the things, as you were talking just now, I have another quote that I pulled out, page 73. In the home, we gain a sense of our great and imperishable human dignity. And maybe we can kind of just slowly start to end on that thought, because wow, in a world of despair and, again, isolation and confusion and fakeness, in the home we gain a sense of our great and imperishable human dignity. How much more can we elevate the home in that? Because if we know who we are, if we know our dignity in God who loves us and calls us by name, we can do anything,
We belong in our homes not because of what we do, but because of who we are. I think that's so important. I belong here because I am the mother or the wife. My children belong here because they're the son, the daughter, and they don't have to earn their place. They absolutely, like existentially belong here. And in any other place, in a school, you have to earn, you have to get good enough grades to stay in that school, or in the workplace for sure, right? You have to do your job or else you're going to be fired. There's nothing wrong with those things, right? But you have to, it's because of what you do that you belong there. But in the home, it's because of who you are. And I think that's that human dignity. And if it's a good home, you're valued for who you are. You receive, you are listened to, not because you tell great stories, but because you have it's because you have a right to that, because that's the way, you can talk because it's your home and people listen. I think that's and then you're cared for, you matter. And you don't just matter to the success of this endeavor, to the success of the company that you work for, but you matter simply because it's your family. It's you belong in this home.
Dia, I have really loved your book. There's so much. I think I could read it more times. I think the idea to give this to young people as a gift is wonderful, for a wedding gift. In fact, I'm going to a wedding this summer. Perfect. Anyway, I do think there's so much here. It's so beautiful. It's important to think about. And I thank you for thinking about it, for bringing our awareness to what a home is and how valuable it is and how important it is, so that we can really be thoughtful about our own homes, no matter what stage we're in. There's a whole other conversation about what happens when we have to leave our homes, but that will be part 2, I guess. But Dia, as we close out, I always circle back to the question. And I know this one was kind of like, you're like, I'm going to have to wrap my brain around this, but I know you thought about it. So I know we kind of tackled it earlier, but can a home have a soul, Dia? What do you think?
I think it's a beautiful way to think about the home. It's of course, it's an analogy or a metaphor that a home has a soul, but a home touches us so deeply. When you talk about your childhood memories and how that formed you, that continues to form you, right? So we see that the power of the home, I think, which, because it's powerful, it's important. I think to repeat that analogy, the house is like the body. You can't have a home without a house. or without some kind of an apartment or a structure or a hut. And the soul is what gives form to the house, to the life within the house, and that's the homemaker or homemakers. And then I think the home itself is like the person. It's the whole, the life within the house and the house itself, and it's a beautiful thing and a necessary thing.
I love it, and I love that you don't denigrate the word homemaker. I think we need to bring that word back and bring it up into the light and realize, like, people that are in their home creating this beauty, truth, and goodness within the home, like, that is so indispensable. And you have just, again, brought so many beautiful things to light, Dia. I just thank you so much. I'm going to be continuing to ponder this and give it as gifts, and I hope others will too. Thank you for spending time with us and being thoughtful with us today.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Can a home have a soul? I posed this question to Dia because it's something I've pondered deeply in certain times, and I had a feeling she'd have a good answer to it, or at least a start. While the question, as I laid it out, related to my grandparents' historic home I so fondly recall from childhood, it was another home from those days that initially prompted the question. I was married with children and no longer near my childhood home in the Northeast Montana when it was burned by arson in the mid-2000s. My parents were just months from my mother's retirement and their relocation when it happened while they were away for Christmas. And in the aftermath of that tragedy, as memories began flooding back of our now burned home, I sensed that our home had a soul of sorts. Not like the animating principle of trees or animals or the eternal souls of people, but the moments lived out in a house seemed more than just remembrances. The milestones and memories linger, becoming part of who we are forever. Even if homes don't have souls, they certainly are connected to our souls in an indelible way. And Dia's book, though, was about something much more practical. It was about defining a home so that we can begin to understand the importance of our homes, their functions as harborers of humanity, you might say. I hope you gathered from our conversation what I did, that our homes are much more significant than we realize in the day-to-day. Perhaps we've had a sense of it, but Dia takes us deeper, causing us to realize that homes play a tremendous role in human flourishing, not only the house itself, the structure, but what happens within. Human beings need homes in order to be human, Dia declared. Here I return to a scripture passage from Matthew 8:20. Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. To me, that's a significant statement from Jesus that we need a place to rest, to breathe, to be ourselves, to become ourselves, and to learn how to get along with others. Homes are so much more important than we have tended to realize, and it's good to ponder the things that Dia's own questioning have led her to. A final key phrase from the book I'd like to highlight in closing. In the home, we gain a sense of our great and imperishable human dignity. This line to me makes the goal to create thoughtful homes an imperative. This book and Dia's insights are a treasure that should be part of every home. Well, in a couple of weeks, we'll ask, what can large families teach us about God? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.